I'm using worsted weight yarn in 7 different colors. Throughout the video, I'll show you how I cast on, change colors, cast off, and close the tubes. Finally, I'll show you the full pattern I used to create my Afghan. Casting on, take your waste yarn first and place a few inches inside the machine. Then with the first black pin just to the left of the yarn guide, start with the yarn inside the white pin's hook and slowly start cranking while alternating the yarn from inside to outside each pin. Every other pin, the yarn will be in and out. Do this all the way around. Once you've made a full rotation, place the yarn in the yarn guide and close the cover. In the first 1 or 2 rounds, slowly wind the machine to ensure the pins are all catching the yarn. Once it's established, crank around until you have at least 5 rows of waste yarn. Stop when you get to where the black pin is just to the left of the yarn guide. Now, place the remainder of the waste yarn inside the machine, leaving a few inches. And then you're going to place your first color for the tube with a few inches inside the machine. Don't forget to reset the counter. And put the yarn in the yarn guide and slowly start winding the machine while ensuring the yarn is catching properly on the pins. I like to hold the yarn at the beginning to ensure the first pin catches the yarn. Go around slowly for the first round to ensure it's fully knitted properly, then go ahead and start cranking. For each color, knit 40 rounds. For the first color change here, cut your yarn, leaving a few inches, and place it on the inside. Place your next yarn color in, hold the yarn to ensure the pin catches it, and again, for the first round, go slowly to ensure that it catches. Once you go about halfway around, I like to tie the 2 colors together, nice and snug underneath the red part of the machine there. You can always adjust this later. Now continue cranking around for 40 more rows for this color. Continue changing colors in the method that I showed you until you have 7 total colors on your tube. Don't forget to lift up the bottom when it starts touching, and I simply just pull it up through the middle so that there is less pressure on the pins. And now I'm doing another color change. I cut the yarn that I'm working on, place it in the middle, add the next color, the orange, put it in the middle, close the yarn guide. I hold the first one down to ensure the pin catches the first piece of the yarn there, and then I crank around and I'll tie it. This is just to secure the 2 ends. You can always undo this and redo it later if you don't like how it's tied. Now continue cranking, go slowly around the knotted area, and then crank for 40 more rows. What I'm doing here is I found a couple of tuck stitches and I was just fixing those tuck stitches. Now I'm completing another color change with yellow. Again, do the same thing, hold it in the beginning to make sure the first pin catches it. I made the yellow a little short here. Continue cranking around and tying off the 2 colors together. Go slow around the first knot to ensure the pins catch the yarn properly, and then continue cranking. I'm just doing an extra knot here because I made the yarn a little short and I want to make sure it doesn't come undone. Now when the yarn is touched at the bottom, you simply want to roll it up in the middle and just roll it in so that it's not touching the bottom. And another tuck stitch I'm fixing. Another tuck stitch that I'm going to fix. I'll have to make a video in the future to show how I do that. I've completed all 7 colors, so I'm going to cut the yarn, take it off the yarn guide, place it in the middle, and I'm going to add the waste yarn, which is this pink color. I like to make sure it's a contrasting color from the yarn that I'm using. And I'll go around at least 5 rows of the waste yarn. Once you've completed 5 rows, simply take the yarn off the yarn guide and crank around. As you continue cranking all the way around without the yarn in the yarn guide, the project will fall off of the pins, as you see here. And do this all the way around, and then you'll be able to take the project and start closing the tubes. So what you'll do here is search for where you took the yarn off and count 23 back. It's a 46 pin machine, so 23 is right in the middle. I'm simply counting all the way to number 23. And when you hit 23, you're going to take your crochet hook and place it from the outside in. In this case, I'm using a 5.5. Grab the yarn and place it through. And the same thing on the bottom, alternate between top and bottom. And you're simply grabbing the yarn and slipping it through the loop from top to bottom, top to bottom. And you'll continue doing this all the way to the end. And since there are 46 pins, you will have 46 slip stitches on your tube. Now at the end, it can be tricky finding those last couple of stitches. So you really need to pull the yarn and find it, hook it through, and then the final piece, you take the length of yarn and pull it through the loop, pull it tight, that secures that end. And now we're going to take out the waste yarn. In this case, it's pretty easy. You just pull on the end piece there and it removes the waste yarn. Continue doing this until it's off. So here you can just check your work, make sure it's tight at the end there, and you can count your stitches, make sure you got every one and that nothing's going to come loose. Looks pretty good. So on the other side, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So grab that, put the hook underneath it, and the same method, pull through from top to bottom. You alternate the loop on the top and pull through the loop on the bottom and pull through. And you're just going to do the slip stitch method all the way until you reach the end. Ensure you're grabbing the topmost loop, which is why it's so important to use a contrasting color with your waste yarn. On the final piece here, you can see it's hard to get that final loop and pull through, and just search to make sure you've gotten all of them, and now pull that little piece all the way through to tighten the end. And now removing the waste yarn for this part is a little more tricky, as you have to pull that yarn through, as you can see here, before it can be easily removed. Sometimes that part gets a little tricky to make sure you're getting the topmost yarn through the loops there and to unravel it. And now we've completed closing the tube from one end to the other. So now what I have here are two different tubes that I've made. One that starts with red and one that starts with orange. And I'm looking for the end to make sure that the two columns are lined up perfectly before I'm going to start attaching the two tubes together. And you want to ensure you do this correctly so that you have a straight line and that the colors all line up together. Now when you start joining the two tubes, you want to ensure that you're staying on the same column on both sides. This is really essential to ensure that you have a straight line when you attach the two tubes. So the first part can be a little tricky, sticking the crochet hook through the top. All right, so I'm going to pick up 3 different pieces first, and I'm using a contrasting color just to show you what it's going to look like. And I'm going to take that off later and use a matching color, but you can see I'm grabbing 2 and pulling it through. Then I go to the other side of the tube and I'm going to grab 2. I stretch it to see it clearly to make sure it's in the right column, pull it through, and I'm just doing a slip stitch using my crochet hook down each side of each tube. And I pull it apart to ensure that I'm using the same column and I'm not grabbing a couple pieces from a different column, which would then misalign the tube. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and start using the orange color yarn to make it match with my project. You can see clearly in the first part, grabbing a couple, and I'll use the other tube, grab 2, and pull the yarn through into a slip stitch, and I just alternate between the 2 to make sure it has a really seamless join between the 2 tubes. And you're going to continue this method all the way down your entire tube project. So continue this down till the next color, and I'll show you how we do a color change. Okay, I'm getting down to the last couple of stitches that I'm going to join together with the orange color on the orange side and then on the red side. And now here is where I will go ahead and cut the orange yarn, grab my yellow yarn, and pull it through the first 2 stitches into a slip stitch. And I'll tie the 2 ends together. Now you'll continue the same method of grabbing 2 stitches, pulling it through into a slip stitch, alternating from one tube to the next tube. Again, make sure that you are on the same column all the way down to ensure that you're lining your tubes up perfectly. So I'll continue showing you how I sometimes pull apart the tube to clearly see the 2 stitches that I need to grab to make sure it's all lined up. And what I'll do is continue this all the way to the end, and I'll meet you when you've completed joining your tubes. You can see where the colors line up really well there. And here I'm joining with the green yarn next to match with the colors on the tube. I cut the yellow yarn, tie the 2 together to secure them, and later on I'll hide those inside the tube. I made them a little short here, make sure they're a little bit longer next time. And again, alternate between the tubes. You can see here I'm pulling apart the tube so I can see clearly where the 2 stitches are that I need to grab. Okay, I've completed the green, and now I'm adding on the blue color here. Grab the 2 stitches of blue, take your blue yarn, pull it through. Sorry it's blurry here. My camera wasn't focusing. And tie the 2 ends together. Just check your work once in a while to make sure that it's lining up properly, and if it's not, you'll just have to simply undo it and try again. Okay, preparing for the next color change to the purple color. I cut the blue yarn, and then I will add the purple yarn. Grab the 2 stitches, grab your purple yarn and pull through into a slip stitch. Tie the 2 colors together to secure your yarn ends, and find the 2 stitches by pulling apart the tube and then use the purple yarn to slip stitch it together. Continue this process all the way to the next color change. I'll meet you at the end. Here, coming to the end of the tube with the red color, pull it apart to make sure you're getting the right last couple of stitches all the way to the last stitch. It's a little bit difficult here, it's tighter. And once you get it all the way through, you're going to grab your red yarn, slip stitch it, go to the other side, the other tube, and do the same process. Now you're going to grab your red yarn, pull it through, cut it, and secure the ends with a knot. I'm just going to knot the two colors together to secure it here. So my two tubes have been joined. You can see where the colors line up pretty well. If you're not happy, you can always go back and adjust it to make sure that the colors line up perfectly how you want it. And that, my friends, is how you join your tubes. I'm going to tie these two ends together here. Thank you so much for watching my video. And here is the pattern. I'm sorry it's not the best. I promise I'll write it out better for you next time. And please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video or if you learned anything from it. I appreciate everyone watching. Have a great day.